All Hallows Eve, the evening all your nightmares come to life. All the creatures of the night come out to play. It's time to pay tribute to this terrifying month. So join us as we celebrate a sinister season. This is the Month of Horrors. The Reboot.
On November 3rd, 1976, a feature film called Carrie was released based on the novel of the same name by Stephen King. Stephen King. A very bizarre mind, and one of which I will be visiting again later on down this list. The story follows a young girl called Casey.
It's Carrie White.
Who is heavily bullied amongst her peers at school. Now, the worst case of bullying of all time. To the point, everybody hates this girl. From generic bullies to teachers to her own religious mother. Her mum has taught her Jack and shit, and Jack left town to visit a fairground whilst banging your grandma, causing Casey
Carrie
to freak out in the school showers when she hits her first red river. The girls then abuse her and throw tampons at her. I did originally ridicule this for how silly and over the top and unrealistic it is. But my best friend, who's a female, has confirmed that the women's locker room is actually a very sick and dangerous place. This scene is apparently very believable and very realistic. Wow. Her mother preaches fake quotes from the Bible and claims a red river is a sign of sin. So she's never had one?
They're all mistakes, children. Filthy, nasty things. Glad I never was one.
The main bully is a bitch queen called Chris, but amongst her clan of evil tampon monsters is a girl called Sue who starts to feel bad and sympathise with Casey.
It's Carrie.
So much so, she asks her boyfriend to take her to the prom instead, as she deserves a night of pure happiness. Her mum tries to disallow her this because boys are evil. So how was she even conceived? It doesn't make much. And her mum later reveals that she was raped. Oh. Moving on. But Casey...
It's Carrie!
reveals that she has telekinetic powers and takes charge. Meanwhile, Chris no-shows detention and gets suspended and banned from the prom despite her lawyer father's best efforts to get it overturned. Hell-bent on revenge, however, Chris now has other plans for prom and along with John Travolta here, slaughters some pigs. Did they mention they're evil? Ooh. They dump a bucket of blood on her, humiliating the poor girl before she goes crazy apeshit.
Trust me, Carrie. You can trust me. Trust me, Carrie. You can
stop making fun of me.
She then returns home, consoles her mother who then tries to kill her before she suddenly remembers that she has superhuman powers and literally crucifies her. Casey
Carrie?
Then suddenly and cleverly and metaphorically sends her house crumbling to the ground. Sue visits her grave before they decide to inspire Friday the 13th just a few years later with a fake-out cliffhanger dream ending that they can completely rip off. The very first novel to be published from the genius author with a boner for his home state of Maine was Carrie, released in 1974. It was his first published, but his fourth written. He was actually so broke, he wrote this book whilst he was working in a $1.60 an hour job in an industrial laundrette and living in a trailer using a portable typewriter. It started as a short story, and he originally threw the first 3 pages in the garbage. King claimed at the time, some woman said, "You write all those macho things, but you can't write about women." I said, "I'm not scared of women. I could write about them if I wanted to." So I got an idea for a story about this incident in a girl's shower room, and the girl would be telekinetic. I did the shower scene, but I hated it and threw it away. His wife Tabitha actually got the pages out of the garbage and encouraged him to continue, which he did. King admitted he only persisted because he had no better ideas at the time. He actually thought that he had written the world's all-time loser. Little did he know that Shia LaBeouf wouldn't actually be born for another 12 years. He wasn't even sure if he should publish the book in the first place. He felt like out of all of his manuscripts, it was the least marketable. He literally finished the novel and then put it on the shelf before beginning work on Salem's Lot. However, after the success of The Exorcist and Rosemary's Baby in previous years, he decided to go for it and send Carrie away for publishing. He received a telegram in March or April 1973 offering publication, and he immediately bought a new car. On May the 13th, 1973, Mother's Day, New American Library bought the paperback rights for $400,000. The hardback sold a mere 13,000 copies, but the paperback released a year later sold 1 million in just its first 12 months alone. King was offered a tiny $2,500 for the film rights. A friend of his passed the novel on to director Brian De Palma, who loved the story and wanted to find out more. Upon research, he discovered that nobody had actually purchased the rights to the book yet. Several studios were considering it, but nothing was concrete. De Palma showed great interest, but nothing will happen for a further 6 months or so. Stephen King was very happy about the choice of De Palma, however, as he loved his 1972 picture Sisters. Lawrence D. Cohen was brought on as the screenwriter and, with his first draft, produced a script very close to the novel's original material. United Artists accepted his second draft, but only with a $1.6 million budget, which was actually quite low, considering this was around the time when horror movies were becoming a huge thing and the book itself was quite popular as well. The budget did increase, but only to a slightly more $1.8 million. Art director Jack Fisk was working on the movie, and he convinced De Palma to let his wife Sissy Spacek audition for the lead role. The director's first choice was Betsy Slade, based on her film Our Time, and Melanie Griffith was also considered, but Spacek was so determined to land the part, she backed out of a TV commercial she was due to shoot, rubbed Vaseline in her hair, didn't wash her face, and arrived in a sailor dress with the hem cut off that her mother had made for her in the 7th grade. This got her the part. Amy Irving, who played Sue, was lucky enough, or unlucky enough, depending on how you look at it, to be cast alongside her real-life mother Priscilla Pointer as, here's a stretch, mother and daughter. Nancy Allen, who played Chris, was the last to audition just as she was on the verge of leaving the land of Hollywood altogether. She would end up marrying director Brian De Palma. Isadore Mankowski was brought on as the director of photography, but drama began between him and De Palma, that rhymed, leading to Mario Tosi taking his place. Weirdly enough, the school that they used to shoot in, the land that it was built on was originally owned by a couple called Debbie Reynolds and Eddie Fisher. Ryan Reynolds' parents? No, Carrie Fisher's parents. There was originally an opening and closing sequence of the house being bombarded with stones hailed from the sky. However, there were constant mechanical problems and they had to cut it out, replacing it with a fire at the end instead. The closing scene that, Friday the 13th clearly stole, was actually inspired by Deliverance and it was shot backwards to make it more dreamlike. Now, Sissy Spacek had insisted on it being her real hand coming out from below. De Palma wanted to use a stunt person because it would have literally involved burying her underground. Sissy didn't care, so she was actually buried alive for that sequence and did so without any complaints. The film was very well received and widely considered one of the best movies out in 1976. Stephen King himself loved the movie upon release. The film changed the ending to the book dramatically, but King admitted that he actually preferred the movie's ending to his own. But then he gets pissed off when the movies change the details from the book. In fact, he also went on to say the entire movie is much better than his novel. The first one is a classic and focuses on being a lot more subtle, which I'll always respect more. Sissy Spacek was the best interpretation of the character in my mind. Although she's cute and innocent, seriously, she's freaking adorable. You can buy her in this role as a shy, bullied loner. Although it's true that they didn't dive into the bullying aspect of the plot as much as the 2013 version, that's exactly why it's more effective. I'm just gonna be honest with you. I was bullied every day at school and it was a difficult period of my life. From nursery up to when I left education, I was heavily picked on. I tried to kill myself when I was 13 years old. That's how bad it was, but of course I put on a smile and nobody knew just how difficult it was for me. I even confronted some of the bullies years later and they have said that they didn't mean anything by it and didn't think of it as that much of a big deal. My point is, although the film is based on her, with the exception of the sequences with her abusive mother, it's mostly told from the point of view of the school, the bullies, the teachers. We see the shower incident, but we don't see how truly psychologically scarred this girl really is. That's what bullying is all about. They don't actually see how much they're hurting her. Sissy Spacek's performance carries, no pun intended, this movie with her subtlety alone, and it's incredibly well done. The 2013 version shoved it down our throats that she was bullied to the point it was laughable. It was a constant reminder, whereas here in 1976 it was kept simple and therefore that much more shocking, heartbreaking and impactful when she snaps at the end. It's done incredibly well, and yes, in my opinion, the story is told much more cleverly because of this approach. It's a weird one because the original film had Chris the bully be absolutely sadistic and evil. She really hated the poor girl with very little reason and was hell-bent on revenge. In 2002, it was actually her boyfriend manipulating the situation. Chris just goes along with it out of fear, but you can tell that she doesn't want to do it. She actually feels bad, and it's a weird take on the character, but it's quite refreshing rather than just having her be this cold-blooded bitch queen. The teacher, Miss Desjardins, though her name changed in the first movie for some reason, is a strange character that often grows difficult to like. Even when she's seemingly the only person other than Sue to stick up for Casey, Carrie, she then has random bitch moments where she too insults her.
I knew how they felt. See, the whole thing just made me want to take her and shake her too.
Stick to the slow songs. She'll look stupid dancing to anything fast.
When you show up to prom with Carrie White on your arm, don't you think you're gonna look the tiniest bit ridiculous?
Bitch. Carrie's mother was always a batshit insane psychopath, and I believe that nobody captures it quite like Piper Laurie in 1976. Piper Laurie is incredibly deranged. It's like if Miss Trunchbull had a daughter. Although this came out first, so maybe she's Miss Trunchbull's mum? It's weird because Piper Laurie was convinced that she was starring in a dark comedy. She found her lines and the direction she was given to be so over the top and ridiculous that to this day she is convinced it's still a dark comedy. I felt like it really worked, and she's one of my favourite villains of all time. The principal was a minor role, but none can top the O2 version. I mean, don't get me wrong, he's a massive bollock face, no doubt. He purposely mispronounces her name constantly throughout just to be a prick. Now, there's only really two more characters to discuss, and that's Billy, Chris's boyfriend who helps her plan the whole prank, and Tommy, Sue's boyfriend who takes Carrie to the prom. In the original, Billy was played by John Travolta in an early role, and he sucks. No, really, like, really bad.
Don't be in such a hurry. I'm hurrying away from you, you know that? I thought I told you never to call me that.
Yes, ma'am. We's doing the best we can. We really are, boss.
He is so bad, but to his credit, it was years before he actually learned how to play the villain. He wouldn't learn that for
the next 100 years.
In the original, he was just kind of there. Even right here, he doesn't even look like he's supposed to be here. And now for Tommy, who was originally played by William Katz, who looks like Heath Ledger before Heath Ledger was Heath Ledger, despite the ridiculous 1970s hairstyle. Not even the 70s should have allowed that. This is my favourite interpretation of the character easily, and here's why. So many high school films constantly turn to cliches, and if the original film was made nowadays, Tommy and Carrie would have fallen in love and gotten together. Here, it's nothing more than a nice deed from Sue and Tommy. Granted, the 2013 film had Carrie openly admit that she knows he doesn't feel that way about her and she's okay with it and grateful. That was a beautiful new addition, but I love the fact that they're just at prom, nothing more. It's just a nice act from one friend to another. In the original though, what separates it is that Tommy actually wants to be there. In the other two versions, he's pressured into it, like constantly. Jesus Christ, just let him take her out because he wants to. Why remind us constantly that he doesn't? In the original, he's talked into asking her out, but that's it. He takes her out and then, I won't lie, these two are completely adorable together. He's a gentleman and is incredibly sweet and treats her the way she deserves, so when we finally see her smile, it's really nice to see. They share a kiss, but it's between friends for a good night and nothing romantic. It's beautifully done and made perfect sense. He was treating her nice because he was just a nice guy. He didn't need any further motivation. He didn't need to be forced to do it, and it really helped her build her confidence and finally smile for the first time. The other actors weren't bad, and nor was the script, but I feel this was again more subtle and more reassuring because of his genuine likability. And now the prom scene. You know, it's amazing that with 3 on-screen adaptations of the novel, not a single one actually follows the book. In fact, in the book, not only does she gain telekinesis, but she also gains telepathy. She's able to read minds and send her own thoughts into other people's heads. So for films that are so accurate to the book, how come none of these included any of that? Anyway, in the novel, after the prank, Carrie leaves the prom completely humiliated. Once outside, she remembers her powers and locks the doors. She then messes with the sprinklers and causes chaos whilst watching from outside the windows. I get why they all opted to keep her inside during it, but it's weird for each one claiming they were following the book more closely. I mean, everyone hates the 2002 version, but it was the only one who actually kept the novel's ending of Carrie stopping her mother's heart with her powers. Which, by the way, is so much cooler than just throwing knives at her. All in all, the original's prom scene built up the suspense before the prank so well that when it actually happened, it was far more devastating and heartbreaking, and you know, she wasn't a cold-blooded killer. Now on to overall thoughts and summaries of all 3 films, including any final criticisms.
You old woman now.
Why didn't you tell me, Mama?
I thought the tits would have been a bit of a giveaway. Why is this girl dressed up like Mario? Seriously, I need to know.
Now I want you all to know that you did a really shitty thing yesterday, a really shitty thing.
You said you wanted to join in. Okay, so once the shower incident happens, everyone's punishment is literally a week's detention. A week's detention? They deserve a longer sentence than Hitler for that shit. I do feel in this one, it often hits unrealistic mode by having everyone being stupidly evil.
And spit out that gum.
Where'll I put it, Miss Collins?
You can choke on it for all I care. Just get it out of your mouth.
Billy. Billy. Billy.
Just gonna say it. He must have a ridiculously small cock if she's able to say his name that clearly with it in her mouth.
You know you can't go without a date.
Wow, way to make people feel like utter shits.
I've been invited to the prom.
Prom.
Dad, I'm going to school.
School? This guy clearly misses his cue on delivering his line.
Ernest. Oh, listen, tonight's prom night and everything.
This dude looks like a paedophile uncle in that suit. The hell is this woman doing? This shot is done so well, but unfortunately I feel like it tends to go on a little too long and it makes the viewer feel dizzy. So Sue spots the bucket, and bear in mind this footage is sped up. It takes her forever to do anything about it. Look at it. Jesus Christ, tell her! Tell someone! Even worse, the teacher sees Sue and can clearly spot her looking at something. Instead of glancing up to see the bucket or anything, she just kicks her out for, I guess, I don't know, having no date, and doesn't listen to her pleas of Carrie is in danger. The visuals are insane during the massacre and the editing is flawless.
Release the evil.
Too much evil.
The bullies do, however, shift into maniac mode and go from stupid high school prank to flat out murder. I also feel like this version lacked development of the telekinesis. I think they could have expanded more on that, which the others did better. All in all, this is my favourite of the three. It has problems, sure, but it has an intense feel to it, the music and final editing especially. I'd recommend all three, not that one. But my personal favourite is the original and definitely a horror classic.